Welcome to Learn French, French for Beginners, Lesson 10. We will be looking at ER, IR, and RE verbs. We'll look at the introduction and conjugation of the regular ER, IR, and RE verbs. And these would be in the present tense. We'll also look at the list of verbs, their examples, and I'll give you some tasks to do. So a verb, if you have seen in the earlier lesson on conjugation, it is a word that expresses an action. So that could be to speak or to sell. In French, to speak would be parler and to sell would be vendre. It can also be a state of being, like to be or to feel. To be, it's in French, it's être. And to feel, it's sentir. A verb also indicates when an action or that state of being takes place, and that will be the tense, whether past tense, present tense, or future tense. But in this lesson, we are looking at the present tense. And the regular verbs that we are looking at, they are grouped into three forms or three groups or three major groups. We first have the verbs that ends with er or the infinitive er, and this would be the first group. The second group ends with ir or er in French, and the third group ends with re. So to conjugate this verb in the present tense, just some quick revision. The correct conjugated forms of a French verb are obtained from its basic or its unconjugated form, which is normally called the infinitive. And this is indicated by an ending, which could be er or re or ir. So an example of an er verb, that's parler, to speak. An example of an re verb that ends with re is entendre, which means to hear. And an example of an ir verb is choisir, which means to choose. So these endings are equivalent to the English to. For example, in action words, you say to something or to act, to do, to have. So other examples can be to speak, to hear, or to choose. To conjugate these verbs, you drop the ending, and our endings, as I said earlier, are either er, ir, or re. You drop those endings from the infinitive form. And when you drop them, you are forming a stem or a root. Next, you add the present tense endings, to that stem or to that root. So we have different tenses and different endings. Let's look at the endings in the present tense. This is a table which summarizes the endings which you will put after removing the er or ir or re endings. Then also each ending is equivalent to a subject. So our subjects are je for I, tu for you, the second person singular. Then we also have il, elle, or on, which is he or she or one, the third person singular. Then we also have nous, which means we, the first person singular, the first person plural, we. Then we also have vous, which is the second person plural. So you singular, you plural or formal. Then we also have il and elle, which means they. Il for an inclusive group of men and women, and elle for an exclusive group of women. So each ending will correspond to the subjects. So let's look at the endings for ER verbs, the first group. The first group, after you have removed the ER For je, you put e. For tu, you put es. For il, elle, on, you put e after removing the ending. For nous, you remove the er and you replace it with ons. For vous, you replace it with ez. For il, elle, you replace it with ent. Those are the endings for er verbs, which is the first group. Going on to the second group, which is ir or er group. For je, you remove the er or er with es. For tu, you replace it with es. For il, elle, on, you replace it with it. Then for nous, you can say ils sont. For vous, isse. For il and elle, it's is. Okay, so for those verbs that ends with er, I'm saying ils sont, isse, is, because those would be the sounds when you have conjugated the verbs. Then for re verbs, the third group, for je, the ending is s. For tu, the ending is s. Then for il, elle, on, it's nothing. There's nothing there. You just remove the ending re and you leave it like that. Then for nous, ons. For vous, ez. And for il, elle, ent. Okay, let's now get into the first group and see some examples and how to conjugate verbs on er. So to conjugate these verbs, like I have been saying, you drop the er or the er from the infinitive to form the stem. Then you add the er present tense endings to the stem or the root. And the endings, I've listed them here in green: e, es, ons, ez, and ent. And they are forming the present tense. An example, we take the word or the verb chanter, which means to sing. Chanter, it's an er verb. It ends with er. So after removing the er crossed out here, you are left with a stem or a root, which is sort of like chant. And with the subject je, suppose you want to conjugate with the subject je, you pick out the ending for je, which is e, and you add it to the stem, and you have chante. For example, je chante bien, I sing well. And you also have to take note that the endings e, es, and ent are silent, meaning you do not pronounce them when you have conjugated them. Only the endings that are pronounced are on nous and on vous. For example, if we were to conjugate the verb chanter with the subject nous to say we sing, it would be nous chantons. And you sing would be vous chantez. But for je, it will be je chante. For tu, tu chantes. For il, elle, on, il chante, elle chante, on chante. And also the third person plural, il and elle, it will be il chante, elle chante. We're saying the the es, the and the nt are silent. Only the nous conjugations on nous and vous are pronounced. Let's see some examples of er verbs. This is not an exhaustive list of er verbs. We have acheter, to buy; appeler, to call; essayer, to try; parler, to speak or to talk; préférer, to prefer; voyager, to travel; adorer, to adore or to like; habiter, to live; aimer, to like; jouer, to play; montrer, to show; chanter, to sing; présenter, to introduce; chercher, to look for; regarder, to watch. We also have rencontrer, to meet, could be by chance, demander, to ask, rester, to stay or to remain behind, détester, to hate or to detest, téléphoner, to call or telephone, donner, to give, travailler, to work, manger, to eat, écouter, to listen, trouver, to find, étudier, to study, chercher, to look for, regarder, to watch, and danser, to dance. Okay, so these are examples of verbs that end in er. They are called er verbs. Okay, so here we also have verbs like manger and acheter and appeler and préférer. They are also called stem changing verbs, but their endings are conjugated the same by just removing the ending, the er. And for je, you put an e. For tu, you put an es. For il, elle, on, you put an e. For nous, you put ons. For vous, ez. And for the third person plural, il, elle, you put ent. Let's look at some examples of sentences with the verbs that have been conjugated with different subjects. Number 1, Anno et Ati, ils habitent à Westgate. We have the verb habiter. This is the verb that we have conjugated. So whenever you have two people or more, that will be the subject je. Is the subject il, the third person plural. It's equivalent to il or elle. You say they. So we have removed the er and replaced it with an ent. For Tanya, for number 2, we have Tanya étudie le français. Tanya studies French. The verb étudier. We have the subject Tanya, which is equivalent to il or elle, one person. So Tanya étudie le français. Number 3, je chante un peu. We have the verb chanter and the subject je. Je chante un peu. I sing a little. Number 4, j'adore la musique française. The verb adorer, meaning I like French music. J'adore la musique française. Number 5, nous jouons du foot with the verb jouer. And we've conjugated with the subject nous. So nous jouons au foot, we play football. So for verbs that end with that end in er, there is a task for you to do with verbs like aimer, to like, another aimer, to like, détester, to hate, jouer, to play, and voyager, to travel. Your task is to conjugate them with the subjects that are here, with vous, with tu or number 2, with tatenda, with pretty, with popo. Take note that when you have a person's name, that is equivalent to the subject il or elle. Moving on to the second group of regular verbs in French. These are verbs that ends with the infinitives er or ir. To conjugate these verbs, you are dropping the er and you are replacing it with ers, es, it, ison, ise, and is. Okay, so you also have to take note that the singular and plural forms of the third person are clearly distinguishable. Okay, then examples of such verbs that ends with er, we have agir, to act, choisir, to choose, courir, to run, finir, to finish, mourir, to die, sentir, to feel, grossir, to gain weight, réagir, to react, veiller, to grow old, choisir, and verbs like mentir, réunir, obéir, réussir. Those are some examples of the verbs that are ends with in er. Let's look at some examples with the ones that are regular. These are verbs like finir, maigrir, obéir, and choisir. Okay, so for example, tate est petit. Finissent toujours les pizzas. So the finis here would have an E double S I double S E N T because we have two people. Tate et Patty finissent toujours les pizzas. Tate et Patty, they always finish their pizzas. Number 2, we have the verb maigrir. So we are also removing the ER and replacing it with ET because blessing, like I said before, it's a person's name and it corresponds to the subject il or elle. So blessing maigrit parce qu'elle mange peu. Maigrir means to slim, to get lean. Number 3, the verb obéir, to obey. Tim n'obéit pas à Tom, meaning Tim does not obey Tom. And the obey, we're just removing the ER and replacing with ET because our subject is Tim and is corresponding to il. Number 4, merci, pourquoi est-ce que tu n'es fini pas tes devoirs? Merci, why are you not finishing your homework? And the fini has an ES at the end because we have the subject to. Yes, we have a person's name, but the subject here, the pronoun here, overrides the name. So we are conjugating with to, and the ending for to in ER verbs is ES. So merci, pourquoi est-ce que tu n'es fini pas tes devoirs? Number 5, Fiona et Tanya, vous choisissez toujours du vin blanc. And we have conjugated choisi with vous. Again, we are taking the conjugation of vous because that's the one that is nearer to where the verb is. Choisissez. Choisissez. Toujours du vin blanc. Okay. So next is your task to conjugate with the verb grandir, grossir, réunir, obéir, and réfléchir. Now moving on to the third and final group of regular present tense verb, which is RE verbs. The present tense conjugation of these verbs, for you to conjugate them, you drop again the ending, which is RE in this case, and you put the present tense conjugation or the present tense endings. For example, if you take the verb vendre, which means to sell, you remove the RE, you are left with vend, V-E-N-D. And if you add any, for any subject, you can add these endings. For example, if I want to say, I sell sweets, it will be je vends des bonbons. And I've just taken the verb vendre, removed the RE, and replaced the RE with an S, because that's the ending for je. You also need to take note that the final D and the DS in the singular are silent. Okay, so vend is more of a nasal vend, not vend. But when you get to the third person plural, the D, the consonant D before the ANT is pronounced. So it will be il vend, il vend. So for the singular, it will be il vend, and for the plural, it will be il vend. So the conjugation of vendre, to sell, je vends, nous vendons, tu vends, vous vendez, il, elle, on vend, and il, elle vendent. Here is a list of some of the verbs that ends with RE. We have entendre, to hear, vendre, to sell, pondre, to hang, perdre, to lose, répondre, to answer or to respond, attendre, to wait for, rendre, rendre, to hand in or to give back. Yes, it should be ending with an RE here. Then dépendre de, to depend on. Then rendre visite à, quelqu'un, to visit someone. So here they have this almost the same first word rendre, but rendre would be to hand in or to give back. But if you say rendre visite à, you'll be visiting someone. Let's look at an example with the verb vendre, entendre, attendre, and rendre and répondre. Coupa vend son vélo pour avoir de l'argent. Coupa sells or is selling her bicycle to have money. Fiona, tu entends la musique? Fiona, are you listening to music? Tamira, j'attends mes amis à semi-lever. Attend, to wait for. Tamira, I'm waiting for my friends at semi-lever. Atida, Atim, nous rendons visite à Panache. Tu viens? Rendons visite, to visit someone. We are visiting Panache. Are you coming? Noreen, pourquoi est-ce que tu ne réponds pas? Noreen, why is it that you're not responding? Réponds. Your task is to conjugate the following verbs: rendre, descendre, perdre, rendre, and répondre. Try to do the exercise by removing the ending and putting the appropriate conjugation ending or in the present tense. So take note of your subject. Which subject do you have? Do you have one person? Do you have the subject of vous? Do you have two people? Or you have one, maybe third person singular? Okay. Merci. Au revoir.